Hey guys, it's Austin with Wonderladen Racing, and in front of me I've got a 6-speed manual transmission that goes to an L15B7 out of a 10th generation Honda Civic. This one in particular is one that I picked up from a pull yard. It's seen better days. It's a little dingy, a little crusty, but we're going to tear it down. We figured we could do a small video series on what it takes to tear one of these transmissions down, as well as cover some parts you can put into yours to make it perform better, be stronger, more reliable, etc. And yeah, we're basically going to cover all that process. So this video will be tearing it down. We'll have another that kind of covers some of the parts that go into it, what needs to be measured and checked out according to Honda's factory service manual, and what it takes to put it all back together. So with that said, let's get into it. Okay, so first things first, we're going to start by taking out the throwout bearing and the fork, clutch fork. So this is real simple. Basically, pull the fork all the way back. The throwout bearing will pull straight off. This one is disgusting. I'm going to pull the boot off. That just pops out as well. And then the clutch fork itself is retained by just a little clip spring. And let's see if I can get this on video, but basically all you're gonna do is you're gonna reach in behind it and spread that spring out and push it towards itself with your fingers, and then that will release it from its ball and you can pull it right out. So to show you what I meant by that, this is the spring that the ball is clipped under. You'll simply get your fingers in there, push them together so that the nubs pull into the fork, and then you'll lift out. That'll separate it, unclip it from the ball. You can pull it all out. So now that those are out of the way, we're going to put the transmission face down, because when you pull these transmissions apart, the outer casing will lift up and all of the diff and the gear stacks and the selector forks will stay with the bell housing half of the casing. So from there, we're going to remove all of our sensors. So there's this guy, which I already cracked loose. It's a pretty big wrench. I don't remember what size it was off the top of my head. And then we've got some 10 millimeters that hold down the other two. So there's one on the front here. Ooh, baby, she's stuck. Okay. And with these things being plastic, you don't really want to pry on them too weird or anything like that. And one thing of note, so this is your vehicle speed sensor. Basically how it works is it uses the teeth on the third gear to, it's basically a Hall effect sensor. So as the teeth pass over it, depending on how fast the teeth pass over it, it knows what speed the vehicle is going. Something to keep in mind if you find yourself going to be putting aftermarket gears in. Ooh, man, this thing's really in there. Might need to get some, no, she's coming out, okay. Normally they don't, oh yeah, that's why, okay. There's a lot of corrosion inside the bore for this. There we go. So, there's vehicle speed sensor. You don't want to break these things. They're kind of expensive. And you can't really see it too well, but right here there is actually a washer that's really more of a shim, and you want to make sure that goes under the sensor. That controls the spacing to the gear teeth. If that isn't there, the gears will hit the sensor, the teeth will hit the sensor. So got to make sure that's there. Definitely don't miss that, or you'll be buying a new sensor in pretty short order. And then we got our third sensor over here on the back. So this guy. And this is the same deal. This one just pulls straight out, nothing fancy about it. So that's good on sensors. After we get the sensors off, I want to pull all of our detent springs. So basically, detent springs are there to give you that kind of resistance when you're shifting gears. You got to overcome the spring force of that detent spring to put it in gear. These are all 12 millimeters. There's, I can't remember, it's 5 or 6 of them. But basically, they're all kind of on the top or the front side of the transmission. So we got 3 here. And you want to be careful taking these out. There is a spring underneath them. So the bolt itself is kind of hollow. The spring lives inside of it. And then there is a detent ball underneath it. So we want to be careful that we don't lose any of those springs or balls. So just reach in there, grab our little ball, and go on to the next one. All of these are the same, except for one of them has a different spring. I don't remember offhand which one that is, but we'll find out together. So that's 3. There's one here. Yeah, that's the one that has a different spring. So the spring is different, it's a different height, and just make sure that that one goes back in the right place. And then the last 2 are on the front side of the transmission here. So we got one down over here. And then the last one is on the front side underneath our reverse lockout. That is all of our 6 detents. From there, we are going to pull our shift selector arm off, shift selector mechanism. I'm going to get this guy out of the way, this lifting bracket. This is a single 14 millimeter bolt. It just gives me some better access. And then to get the shift select mechanism off, we've got 4 10 millimeter bolts. This rubber cap here on the top is the breather for the transmission. So if you overfill your transmission, it will start puking fluid and you're going to have a mess to clean up. So definitely want to make sure you've got the correct transmission fluid level. So once we got the 4 bolts out, we're going to need to pry this thing off. There's a couple places you can pry. And this is RTV'd on, so it's sometimes can be a bit of a fight to get off. There we go. So once that's cracked loose, you want to make sure that you're in neutral, so both these, this lever will be kind of in the middle without any resistance. Now it just pulls straight up like that. You can set that aside. So from here, all we've got to do to get this casing off is we need to undo this bolt here. I should have left the transmission like that. So we're gonna, there is a, Come on. There is this retaining bolt nut cap, whatever you want to call it, and that is a 14 millimeter Allen. That just zips out, and I don't know if I'll be able to get this on camera. You know what? I'll bring my phone over here so we can show you up close what we're dealing with. So we have a snap ring in there. You can kind of see it right there. There's the two little tangs. So we got to grab those tangs with our snap ring pliers. So we'll just reach in there. These guys, which might not work. Yeah, they're good. Okay. And so this snap ring is holding up the weight of the countershaft gear stack. So you don't need to pull on the snap ring at all. Simply open it up, and once it's open far enough, you'll hear the gear stack fall. Once that's done, all we got to do is remove the perimeter bolts. They're all 12 millimeter, and they are all the same bolt, except for this one right here is longer than all the rest. Actually, nope, I did forget some things actually. There is a bolt here and a bolt here. One of them goes into a stay for the reverse idler gear, and that's what this guy is, this larger one. There is a crush washer underneath it. That's what seals it, so you definitely don't want to lose that. Ideally, though, you'd want to replace that. And then there is, this doesn't actually have to be removed. This 10 millimeter bolt is just a fill level inspection. So since the fill is at the top of the transmission, when you fill your transmission fluid, you will take this bolt out, and once fluid starts coming out of this hole, then you know that you have enough fluid in your trans. So it doesn't need to be removed, that just threads into the casing. So get back to removing our case bolts. Definitely a lot of bolts. Okay, that is all of the case bolts for the perimeter. Now we have to pry the casings apart. So just like the shift selector mechanism, sorry. So like I was saying, just like the shift selector mechanism, the case halves are RTV'd together, so we've got to pry them apart. There's also some dowel pins that hold it together, if I remember correctly. But basically, there's a pry point here, there's a pry point here, and there's a pry point on the back side. And these things are usually glued together pretty good, so probably going to have our editor just time-lapse this part, because this is not fun. There we go. Okay. Always a fun time. So this casing just lifts up and our transmission is open. NANI? That's one I haven't seen before. Okay, well, we took the input shaft bearing with the case I've not had that happen before, but it is just a slip fit bearing, so I'll have to look at that later. Anyway, put this down here, and from this point we can pull everything else out. Pretty much nothing is really kind of retained at this point. A lot of it just lifts up. But as you can see, we got the diff here, counter shaft, input shaft, or input shaft, output shaft, whatever your preferred terminology is. And then we've got our shift forks that our shift selector pushes and moves to grab gears. So in order to take all these gears out, I gotta decide where I want to put all these things. Throw these pry bars over here. I don't really want these on the dirty cart, so give me one moment. I am gonna go grab a clean tray to put these things in. Okay, so got my tray. To start, we're gonna take off this oil gutter. This isn't held down by anything, it just has some pegs that kind of hold it in place. So just a little bit of wiggling, pulls right out. Don't wiggle too hard, you don't want to damage it. Throw that aside. From there, we're gonna take off our shift forks. These are bolted down in a sense. There's two 10 millimeters right here, and those guys basically hold down this fulcrum point for the reverse. So it's just two 10 mils, and that comes out. Cool. Actually, you're gonna go over here, and then from there, we can pretty much pull out our reverse idler. Actually, no, we're gonna go with the shift forks first. So these guys they can be a little bit of a pain to pull out, but they've kind of all got to come out together, which is why they're a bit of a pain. And you're probably gonna watch me struggle with this for a minute. Now I remember. Okay. So basically, the first thing we want to pull out is this center shaft here. There is a spring under it that gets its tension on this pin. So pull that pin, that will get tension off the spring. You're going to pull this larger pin out the center, out of the casing, and then from there, that all comes off. You can kind of leave that as an assembly. And then from there, we want to get our shift forks, and these can kind of be a little bit of a pain. You should be able to get your reverse gear shift fork out with a little bit of wiggling. There we go. This will probably also be another time lapse because this is not really that thought involved. It's just a lot of wiggling. Make things kind of slip apart. Take off reverse gear, basically just the way I did before. There's a center shaft that goes into the case, and once you lift that up, you can lift the whole assembly up. Recommend trying to keep it all together. There's more than a few bearings in here that want to stay in a specific order, as well as some spring shims and stuff. So yeah, helps kind of keep it all together. Usually how this goes, it's a lot of wiggling and fighting. Things never just slide out. So unless you got that magic touch, which clearly I don't. Okay, so what I'm gonna do instead is we're just gonna flip the trans on its side so I can get to the end of the input shaft. I'm not hitting very hard. This is, yeah, it's the input shaft bearing that's holding us up. So I have been able to bring it up. Let's see if I can do this without it dropping. Okay. Have been able to bring it up. You can see input shaft bearing is raised a bit now. Been able to bring it up to get the shift forks out. That will make it a little bit easier for me. Okay. That guy. There we go. And then our gears, input and output stacks. And you want to be careful because this bearing didn't stay on like it didn't for me. These gears are splined to the shaft, so if you pull by them, you can pull them right off. Which I'm not trying to do right now, so I don't want to do that. I shouldn't have done that, but I did. Okay, we're just going to leave you off for the time being. Wow, these synchros look really good. They told me 90,000 miles on this thing. These things are in really good shape. That's awesome. I don't have to buy new synchros. But anyway. Not had an input shaft bearing hang up like this one has on one of these transmissions before. I've torn down a few of these things now. There we go. Okay, so input and output shaft. We're gonna set them here. Make sure that they're setting down nicely. Nothing's getting nicked or dinged. Okay, flip this guy back over. Now we just have our bell housing with our diff in it. And the diff just pulls straight up. And that is how you tear down an L15B7 transmission. From this point, we got to clean everything and got to assess the condition of everything. Have a bunch of parts to put in it. We'll be showing that on the next video. Thanks for checking it out, guys. We'll see you on the next one.